Millions of us hold them in our hands every day, symbols of innovation, sleek design, and unmatched user experience. But what if the gleaming surface of your iPhone or MacBook hid a darker truth? Today, we peel back the layers of the disturbing dark history of Apple, a story of exploited labor, questionable ethics, and relentless legal battles. Watch until the end because this goes way beyond the sleek facade and into the shadows where the true cost of progress may lie. Apple. We all know the name. It screams innovation, sleek design, and cutting-edge tech. But behind that shiny Apple logo and the cool gadgets we love, there's another story, a seldom told story, shrouded in darkness and despair. But what truly lies within the depths of its grimness? The year is 2010. Apple was on top of the world. Their iPhones were everywhere, and the company was making a ton of money. But behind the scenes, something dark was happening. Reports started coming out of factories in China, mostly owned by a company called Foxconn that made Apple products. These reports talked about horrible working conditions, people working extremely long hours, getting paid very little, and even being forced to work overtime. According to Apple, about 1.5 million people help make their products, with a third of them working in big factories where the final assembling of iPhones happens. During the same time that Apple was making a ton of money, around 1 million workers were making the parts for the phones and 500,000 were putting those parts together. In one of these assembly factories, workers usually get paid a minimum wage, but they can earn more with overtime. However, even with overtime, their earnings are still below what's considered a living wage in China. They often work very long hours, sometimes up to 17 to 18 hours a day, especially when there's a lot of work to do. If we look at how much it costs for each iPhone to be assembled, it's roughly around 27 cents. But Apple makes a lot of profit from each iPhone sold, around 39.9%, which is much higher than what other companies in the electronics industry make. Businesses often choose to manufacture their products in countries where labor is cheaper, like China, because it helps them save money. But when does trying to save money turn into taking advantage of workers and people? In these big factories, workers usually have to work either during the day or at night for 12 hours straight. They have very little time left for themselves, whether it's just for relaxing, learning new things, or even just resting. After long shifts, many workers are so tired that they end up falling asleep while working, sometimes even near dangerous equipment, as revealed by an investigation by BBC Panorama. But it wasn't just long hours, though. Some people felt so desperate that they took their own lives. This sparked massive outrage from people around the world. They started asking questions. What is the real cost of these gadgets we love so much? Is it okay for people to be treated this way so that companies can make huge profits? All these questions were left unanswered. But every minute as you scroll through your social media feed, oblivious to the world around you, an estimated 27 iPhones roll off of the assembly line, each one with hidden suffering. And you might not be surprised to know that the problems weren't just inside the factories. It turns out the controversy surrounding Apple's labor practices stretches far beyond those walls. In 2019, Apple found itself named in a lawsuit alongside other big tech companies like Google. The accusation that they were indirectly benefiting from something horrible, child labor. The lawsuit claimed that these companies, including Apple, were using materials in their products like cobalt that may have been mined by children in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or the DRC. Cobalt is a mineral that's really important for making phone batteries last longer. But unfortunately, a lot of the world's cobalt comes from the DRC, and there have been reports of children being forced to work in dangerous mines there. This case raised some really tough questions about how much control Apple really has over their entire supply chain. Now, you might think it ends here, but Apple's story isn't just about factory conditions and ethical sourcing. It also involves a different kind of fight, legal battles. While we often think of Apple as an innovative company, it's also faced accusations of using its power in unfair ways. One of the biggest issues has been monopolies. This means having so much control over a market that it's almost impossible for other companies to compete. Back in 2005, Apple faced a lawsuit claiming it had a monopoly on music downloads with its iTunes software and iPod players. Remember how iPods wouldn't work with other music platforms? Yeah, that was part of the accusation. This wasn't the only time Apple faced such claims. Similar lawsuits followed, challenging their control over the App Store and how it operates. Critics argue that Apple charges app developers too much and makes it difficult for them to compete with Apple's own apps. This is a complex issue with arguments on both sides, but it's important to understand that there are ongoing concerns about how much power Apple has in the tech world. Fairness and competition are ignored altogether when one company is allowed to have so much control over a particular market. Not long ago, in 2020, Apple found itself in another high-profile legal battle, this time with a video game company called Epic Games. You might know them from the super popular game Fortnite. So, what happened? Well, Epic accused Apple of basically being a bully in the App Store world. They argued that Apple has a monopoly, meaning they control everything in their App Store, and it's hard for other companies to compete. Here's how Epic saw it. Apple charges app developers a hefty fee, like a cut of every purchase made within the app. They also restrict how developers can advertise or sell things within their apps. Epic felt these were unfair practices that stifled competition and made it harder for smaller developers to succeed. This case sparked a huge debate. Some people sided with Apple, arguing that they deserve a cut for providing the platform where these apps are sold. Others agreed with Epic, saying Apple's control was too strong and hurt innovation. In July 2023, both Apple and Epic Games appealed the decision to the Supreme Court. Apple has made changes to the way the App Store operates since the lawsuit, including forced changes to Apple's policies under California law. However, just recently, on January 16, 2024, the Supreme Court declined to hear the appeals. This means the lower court's ruling, which favored Apple in some aspects, remains in place for now. This leaves many people, including developers and consumers, wondering what the long-term implications will be for competition and user experience in the App Store. Moving on, Apple's story isn't just about legal battles and ethical sourcing. It also involves another greater concern: privacy. Specifically, your privacy. Apple often positions itself as a champion of user privacy. They emphasize features like strong encryption, user control over data sharing. However, the company has also faced criticism for how it collects and uses this user data. A recent study revealed a data breach exposing the personal information of, get this, over 500 million users. Your most intimate details, the very essence of your digital life, laid bare in the cold grip of corporate servers. Here's the thing. While Apple claims to prioritize privacy, concerns have been raised about the extent of data they collect and how it might be used. Some argue that Apple collects more data than they need, and there have been questions about their cooperation with certain government agencies and data sharing practices. This raises concerns about how much control we truly have over our personal information and the potential for it to be misused. For example, you can point out features like targeted advertising, which, even if it is anonymized, still raises questions about the true extent of user privacy. Others express concerns about Apple's potential cooperation with certain governments and data access requests, even if they claim it's done under legal requirements. Now, something that might hit a little closer to home: fixing your own Apple device. Apple prides itself on high-quality products, but what happens when something breaks? Here's where things get a little complicated. Apple has been criticized for making it difficult and expensive for consumers to repair their own devices. Imagine your iPhone screen cracks or your MacBook battery dies. Ideally, you'd just take it to the local repair shop and get it fixed, right? Well, with Apple products, it's not always that simple. Replacement parts can be hard to find, and Apple's repair services can be quite costly. This has led some people to accuse Apple of something called planned obsolescence. This means designing products to become outdated or malfunction faster, so you're more likely to buy a new one instead of repairing the old one. Apple makes it difficult for people to repair their own devices because they want to force you to buy new ones more often. This not only hurts your wallet, but it also creates a lot of electronic waste. However, Apple argues that their approach ensures safety and quality repairs. They claim that using non-genuine parts or unauthorized repair shops can damage your device and even pose safety risks. The right to repair movement is gaining momentum, pushing for legislation that would require companies like Apple to make it easier for consumers to fix their own devices that they buy. Now, digging even deeper, we find issues that raise further concerns about the company's impact on the world. Apple isn't exactly an environmental hero here. Perhaps it's more accurate to say they're a villain in this regard. They've been criticized for leaving a big carbon footprint, especially during manufacturing and throughout their product's lifespan. This means they create a lot of pollution throughout the process of making and using their devices. Also, concerns have been raised about the e-waste generated by practices like planned obsolescence, which encourages people to buy new devices instead of fixing old ones, as we discussed. Internal reports also suggest Apple might have a gender pay gap, meaning women might be earning less than men for doing the same work. So not only does Apple waste, exploit, or manipulate, it also discriminates. So where does all of this leave us? In the end, we're left with some real questions. Do the benefits of innovation outweigh the ethical concerns? How much power and control should corporations like Apple wield? And most importantly, what are we truly willing to tolerate in the name of progress? As you clutch your iPhone, the familiar comfort gives way to a cold sweat. The once innocent device now feels heavy in your hand, a tangible reminder of the human cost hidden beneath its sleek surface. Millions toiling in the shadows, their stories untold, their struggles unseen. The ethical tightrope Apple walks is a precarious one, and the line between progress and exploitation blurs with every passing year. With each new device purchased, a silent question hangs in the air. Is the innovation worth the cost? Remember, the decisions you make as a consumer have the power to shape the future. Will you turn a blind eye, or will you demand better? The choice is yours, but the weight of that choice, like the weight of your iPhone, is undeniable. In the end, we can all agree that the pursuit of progress must be accompanied by a commitment to social responsibility and ethical business practices.